The, the subject of cancer, doesn't that strike fear in many people's hearts? And there is no easy answer. And you will find this as I speak tonight, and you'll also find it as we go through looking at many different ailments in the body, that it can be different things in different people, and it can be different causes in different people. But even with something this serious, the body still has the ability to heal. And if people come to our retreat that do have cancer, this is what we say to them. We say, we've seen 3 outcomes. We've seen people heal, and that's good news. Number 2, we've seen 6 months go to 6 years, and that's good news. And the third one is sometimes we've seen the last days made more comfortable. Sometimes it is just so advanced. And we've had a few guests that have died within a few months of coming to our retreat. They were at very advanced stages, and their relatives ring us and say, thank you so much. Thank you so much. They died with dignity. The last days were made more comfortable. We had a lady attend our program. She said, I don't have a long time to live. She was only 45. And she said, I am on chemotherapy as palliative care. I said, what's palliative care? Isn't that making the last days more comfortable? I said, is it doing that for you? And she just looked at me quite shocked. She hadn't thought of that. I said, do you have diarrhea? She said, yes. I said, is your hair still falling out? She said, yes. Do you have nausea? She said, yes. Well, I said, I can't tell you what to do, but I'd like to suggest that it's not giving you very good palliative care. And I said to her, I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you what I would do. And I don't usually have to go on after that. And so she stopped. And within 48 hours, she had no more nausea, and the diarrhea had certainly calmed down. And we see so many people that come and say, if only I'd known this. I did not know. And especially in the area of endocrine cancers. So that would be breast cancer, uterine cancer, ovarian cancer, cervical cancer. And with a man, men can have breast cancer, obviously not as much as women, but prostate cancer, that is unfortunately becoming a very common one. And in those areas, there's definitely a hormonal imbalance. And we're going to be looking at this, I think, on Thursday night. We're going to be looking at hormones. And what you'll find is that progesterone is often called mother hormone, because progesterone is the precursor for the female hormone. So we'll call this the daughter, which is estrogen, and there are a few estrogens. And progesterone, being the mother, is mother of the male hormone, the son, which is testosterone. And when these hormones get out of balance, that can contribute to these cancers. You see, estrogen's role is that of a cell proliferator. That means causes massive cell growth. And the Cancer Foundation in Australia have stated that estrogen is a known human carcinogen. So that's been defined by the Cancer Foundation. So why would estrogen be out of balance? Mostly because of the contraceptive pill. It was introduced to women in 1957. 1960s was called the sexual revolution. Women want to be able to have sex without having a baby. But what they don't realise, and what many women still don't realise, is the devastating effect that it has on women to cause this imbalance. You see, the synthetic hormones cause an imbalance, and that imbalance is the rise of estrogen, and the dropping of mother hormone. And progesterone, as the mother hormone, plays a protective role on testosterone, meaning it's keeping testosterone in the place it should be, because when testosterone goes too high, it converts to another type of testosterone that causes inflammation of the prostate gland. So when you've got this rise in estrogen with its cell proliferator action, then you've got growths in the breast contributing to breast cancer. You've got growths in the ovaries, you've got growths in the cervix, and all of those areas. And so with hormonal cancers, it's of the utmost importance to balance back the hormones. And there's a herb, it's called the wild yam. And the wild yam is grown extensively by the pharmaceutical company, because the pharmaceutical company extract a plant chemical called diosgenin, and diosgenin in a laboratory can be converted to progesterone. But the pharmaceutical company cannot patent progesterone because it can't patent anything natural. So it adds a few more atoms in other areas and comes up with a synthetic estrogen, adds a few more atoms in another area and comes up with a synthetic progesterone. It's called progestin or progestone, and it's these synthetic hormones that are in the pill. And when they're fed into the biochemical pathway that our body uses to make hormones, causes a disruption. And that's what prevents a woman falling pregnant, this disruption. But the problem is these synthetic hormones are causing a rise in estrogen. And the progesterone does not help, and it's progestin. It competes with our progesterone. Our body runs according to precision imbalance, and so what this has done is thrown it out. And we've got another problem today. What's causing a chicken to grow in 5 weeks for market? It's the growth hormones. Well, against the law to give growth hormones now, so they've just genetically modified the chicken to produce more estrogen so it grows quicker. And if the human eats that chicken, what happens to them? And if it's in the chicken, it's in the egg. There's more. And that is fabrics, chemicals. In the Industrial Revolution, basically, is where a lot of chemicals were produced, and glyphosate, which is the active component in Roundup, it kills the weeds by actually affecting their hormones. So when the human eats the plant that's actually been contaminated with Roundup, that's having an effect. But also in the Industrial Revolution, there were 3 fabrics that were created in a chemical laboratory: nylon, acrylic, polyester. Nylon, acrylic, and polyester are chemical fabrics. And when they touch the skin and the pores in the skin take them in, little by little, that is also disrupting the hormones, causing this rise in estrogen. It's everywhere, it's everywhere. One lady said to me, "Barbara, I've just looked at all my clothes and I'm going to have to throw them all out." Well, the good news is there are some fabrics that we know natural fabrics are linen and cotton and wool, and I'm sure in Idaho you wear a lot of wool, am I right? You should. I've got woolen leggings on, I've got woolen skirt, I've got a woolen top, and you can get beautiful, soft, thin wools. You've got Smart Wool. That's an American brand. I think this is a Smart Wool. And it's so soft I can wear it next to my skin, and then that's a bit prickly, but I don't mind because it's not touching my skin. So on the neck of the sheep is the soft wool that they make the inner garments with, and then the back of the sheep's the prickly wool. Well, there you can make the coats out of that. And the beauty of wool, we were on our morning walk this morning and I had an alpaca top on, and then I had a wool under that and wool under that and wool under that. And it was lightly raining, and my woolen hat. And you know, when I went back inside, all the light rain does is sit on the outside, but I was warm inside and breathing. Someone has made a fortune out of polyester. And Jacqueline and I, we're in Airbnbs and different places. There's not a place we have stayed in that hasn't got polyester blankets. So you just touch them, it's that stuff. You want to feel something nice, you can come up and touch me. Not all at once. And when I was in Ireland, the only place you can buy wool is the tourist shops. I said, Irish, start supporting your local industry. And when I was in Scotland, I was signing a book and a lady came up to me and she said, I'm a shepherdess. She said, we're burning our wool. She said, we're using wool for compost on our trees. Yeah. This has crept up on us without even realising. We've got to go back to supporting our local industry. Be careful where your dollar goes. I'm very careful where my dollar goes. So starting to be aware of our exposure to chemicals, because you will notice that after the Industrial Revolution and humanity was exposed now to so many more chemicals, you look at that, that's when the rise in cancers. So it's not just hormones. Yes, it's the synthetic hormones. And I'm pretty sure it's Thursday night. Am I right, Jack? Where's Jack? Where's my right hand lady? Thursday we look at hormones, where I'll look in detail about how this disruption takes place and how to restore it. But that wild yam cream with diosgenin, you can buy a wild yam cream that just has the diosgenin in it. And that when that's applied to the skin, the fat cells take it up, and what it does little by little by little, it boosts progesterone. And when you boost that mother hormone, whether it be male with prostate, whether it be female with breast cancer or any type of endocrine cancer, it causes it restores the balance, which is actually what we want. So they're important parts of cancers like the breast cancer. But also what you've got is poultices. And so I had a lady attend our program and she said to me, 20 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. She said, I'm lying in the hospital and they were offering me to be poisoned, burnt and cut. I mean, chemo, radio and operation. Do you know my husband, he suggests that in 20 years we're going to look back and say we're in the dark ages with cancer treatments. So she was lying in hospital. She didn't like the sound of what they wanted to do to her, and a delivery boy came in and she said, can I get a lift out with you? She rang a friend who had a beach house. It was winter, so no one was really staying in the beach house. She said she walked up and down the beach every day. She dived in the beach quickly. And she'd heard about castor oil. Castor oil penetrates deeper than any other oil. And she said, I wore this castor oil compress on my breast 24/7. I've had some people say, is that safe? Well, does anyone say that about the chemicals that they put in? So what she did was she made that's a little bit small. We'll do it more to size. So it's a very simple way to make the compress and depending on the size, and you put that much castor oil on. And what it'll do, it'll sit up like a big bubble because it is so thick. One lady said, I think I bought the wrong castor oil, it's so sticky. I said, yeah, that's what it is. It's just very, very sticky. And if you overdo it, it'll drip everywhere, and you don't want that. It's horrible stuff in that respect. And then as it soaks through, it'll take about 15 minutes. It now takes up that much of the compress. And then when it goes on your hot body, which warms the oil, it takes up more. And that's the best way to make it. And what you also need is several layers, because the thicker your compress, the more castor oil it can hold. and then more castor oil going into you. And then it's just covered by a little plastic strip. So the little plastic strip might be on the back like that. And what the plastic does is it insulates it and it stops it soiling the clothes. And she just bought a sports bra and she just devoted it to that. And she said if she was careful with it, she really didn't get it dripping everywhere. But castor oil penetrates deeper than any other oil, and it'll penetrate through and break up unnatural formations. It'll even break up a bone spur. Not overnight, of course. The bone spur's been there 3 years, it might take 3 months. If it's been there 3 months, it might take 3 weeks. So much depends on how long it has been there. So if it'll break up a bone spur, it'll certainly break up any unnatural formations. So if there's growths on the breast, put it on the breast. If it growth anywhere in the body, apply that castor oil compress. So if it's cancer is in the colon, then apply it to the abdominal area. If it's in the kidneys, apply it there. So wherever it is. What about the head? Well, you can certainly apply it there. It won't be hard to, usually a scan will show you exactly where it is. Yes, the castor oil will even penetrate through bone. So that's the beauty of the castor oil. So as you can see, as I'm coming into the area of cancer, there are specifics for different types of cancers. I have many books at home that were written by professors, scientists, doctors, specialists, GPs, nutritionists, naturopaths that have conquered cancer. And you will find that there are many different things that people say, and it can be very confusing. So as I read all of these accounts, I came to 3 common denominators. And that's what I want to share with you now, those 3 common denominators. But before I do, I just want to finish the story of the lady who said she had breast cancer 20 years ago. Remember? Got out with the delivery boy, went to the friend's house that had the beach house. She walked up and down the beach every day. She went to organic food. She stayed on a plant-based, very simple diet, applied the castor oil every day. And she said as she walked every day, she'd ask God to bring to her mind anybody that she needed to forgive. If she had any area in her life, and that is an important part of healing, is the emotional part. Anyway, she said that lump started to go down little by little. She said within 6 months there was no trace of the lump. So remember, she came to us 20 years later. She said, I had breast cancer 20 years ago. Now, I want to tell you one other story before I go into defining these things. And when I was in Los Angeles last November, I was speaking at a conference, and there was a lady there who was also speaking, and she had her book. She gave me her book. She'd conquered breast cancer. She was about 48, and I think she had the breast cancer when she was about 43. And she did just what the only thing she knew and didn't even question. They said, quickly, we can start chemotherapy immediately. And they said, with chemotherapy, it'll shrink the cancer, then we can maybe do a mastectomy. So she started the chemotherapy tablet by mouth. And she said that she started to get diarrhea quite badly, and she was constantly nauseous, and she was a dark-skinned lady. She had dreadlocks, and she said after 2 months she cried because her dreadlocks were just falling out. And she said after 2 months she got to the point where she was having diarrhea and vomiting 37 times a day. And she got so thin, she was just constantly nauseous, that they had to put a drip in her to give her some nourishment, but they couldn't find a vein, and her arms just got so totally bruised. And then she found she couldn't walk because she had peripheral neuropathy, another side effect of the chemotherapy. She said it felt like she was walking on razor blades. And every day the tablet would come and she would take it. After 3 months of this, she had a scan and the cancer had not shrunk at all. And she kept taking the tablet. That's why I love that verse in Psalm 146, verse 3, it says, "Put not your trust in princes, neither in the Son of Man, in whom there is no help. His breath goes forth, he returns unto his earth. In that very day his thoughts perish." In other words, he's just a man. And it's just an opinion, and sometimes they get it wrong. That's why the Bible says, "Put not your trust there." So what do? Well, verse 5 tells you, it says, "Happy is he that has the God of Jacob has his help, whose hope is in the Lord his God, that made heaven, earth, sea, and all that in them is, that keeps truth forever." This lady kept taking the tablet, the incredible trust. She got to the point where she couldn't walk. She had to be in a wheelchair. And then a friend visited, and the friend said to her, "I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you what I did. I chose not to do this." She said, "I've conquered my cancer. I use natural remedies." And she left. And this lady started to think, so she started to Google. And she found people that had conquered their cancer. And she didn't want to go up on mad tangents, and so she found organic food was a common denominator. She found that juicing was another common denominator, and black seed oil, so a few people mentioned that. So she asked her husband to take her to the health food shop because she was in a wheelchair, and she started to get organic food. She started to do this, and then she made a very difficult decision. She stopped the tablet, but she didn't tell anyone because she said she knew they'd get angry with her. You know, it's your God-given right to do what you do to your body. But when you're in such a weakened state, you need the support of the ones you love. And she didn't even tell her husband because she knew he'd get angry, because he had total trust in the system. She'd hide the tablet. And she took the organic food. She started juicing, and she knew she had to start walking. So she got a physiotherapist. First day she could only walk one step, and it just was too painful. She said after a couple of weeks, her hair stopped falling out and started to grow. The nausea stopped. She was able to start eating. The diarrhea stopped. The vomiting stopped. And after 3 months, slowly she's getting better. She could walk 4 steps, and then a few days later, 6 steps, even though it was excruciatingly painful. After 3 months, she had a scan, and the cancer was shrinking. And everyone was very happy. They said the treatment's working. But she still didn't tell anyone. She just wanted to be sure. After 6 months, the cancers had shrunk right down. She was starting to walk, for a few minutes at a time. And she asked her husband if they could go out. And she told him. She said, "I haven't taken the chemotherapy for 6 months." She said, "I'm so sorry I didn't tell you, but I knew you loved me so much. You wanted to go with the only treatment that you knew." And when I'm reading this book, I have to tell you, I felt anger. And I thought, I'm not reading of a concentration camp here. I'm reading about people in chemotherapy clinics. I do acknowledge, and I had a guest that had a tumour so big it had blocked her colon. She had the chemotherapy and the radiotherapy, which shrunk it, so her colon could move again. Then she came to Misty Mountain, and she went through what I'm going to show you here. I certainly do acknowledge that. And that's why I think we have to continually listen to our bodies and know our bodies, because our bodies will tell us if things aren't working well. Simple as the colon. If we eat 3 meals a day, guess how many times we should be evacuating? 3. And if we're not, that, something can be happening in there, not immediately. The body is incredible how it doesn't strike us down straight away. So what are these 3 common denominators? I'm going to define them by listing what cancer hates. Now, if you know what cancer hates, that's exactly what we want to do to the body. We want to create in the body an environment where it's impossible for cancer to survive. Cancer hates low glucose. Why is that? Because cancer cells consume 15 times the glucose of any other cell. We're going to go to the cell, and I'm going to show you what happens in the cell. The glucose goes in. Now this week we're going to go inside the cell quite a bit because that's what we are. We're just a bunch of cells, and 100 trillion cells in the body, and 75 trillion are, as I'm drawing here, 25 trillion are the red blood cells, and the red blood cells are the carriers to what I call the CBD, the inside, the central business district of the human body, the inside workings of the cell. It's fascinating what's going inside that cell. When you understand what's going on inside the cell, when you understand how the cell works, then you understand the conditions to give the cell for healing. So the glucose goes in and it goes through a 20-step pathway. And this 20-step pathway gives us 2 units of energy. Isn't that why we eat? To give us energy. Now, the end result of the 20-step pathway is a chemical form of glucose called pyruvate. And pyruvate, as the chemical form of glucose, gets fed into what's often called the powerhouse of the cell because this 8-step pathway delivers to us 36 units of energy. Whoa! How come a 20-step pathway only gives us 2 units of energy, and how come an 8-step pathway gives us 36? It's oxygen. This pathway here, no oxygen. And this pathway here is a very fast pathway. It consumes huge amounts of glucose and doesn't use oxygen. Cancer hates oxygen. The fact is, cancer cannot live in the presence of oxygen. A cancer cell runs up here. No oxygen, huge amounts of glucose. Doesn't every cell in the body use glucose? Yes, it does. But this pathway, it can wait from the glucose from the carrot and the lentil and the almond. But this pathway here, it loves and is sustained by a high glucose diet. It's like a lady, and she's happy for me to share her story. Her name's Elizabeth Cott. And she came to us, I think she was late 60s when she came to us, and she had 3 big tumours in her abdomen, and the doctor said, you got to do chemo immediately. She didn't like the look of chemo. She didn't like the look of the side effects. Do you know what chemotherapy is? Cytotoxic. Do you know what that means? Poison to the cell. And the reason why chemotherapy works, and there are some people that certainly have recovered, there are some people that have had chemo and they've recovered, there's no doubt about that. Because this glycolytic pathway is consuming 15 times the glucose of any other cell, when chemo goes in, it consumes 15 times the chemo. That's how it works. But I was reading the confessions of a chemotherapy sales rep. And he said he was at a conference, they were explaining the chemo, and the speaker said, it's a gamble. We're just hoping more cancer cells die than good cells. He was shocked. But what shocked him more was that no one else in the room was shocked. So it's like playing Russian roulette. And the story I'm about to tell you has been told to me many, many times. Lady comes. She's got brain cancer and liver cancer. She said 2 years ago, I had a blood cancer and I took chemo and radiotherapy, and after 3 months they said, you're totally cured. But she said, 4 years ago I had breast cancer. I did chemo, they did radiotherapy, I had a double mastectomy, and after 4 months they said, you're totally cured. And then 2 years later, she had blood cancer. chemo, radiotherapy, 3 months, you're cured. And now she's got liver cancer and brain cancer. Well, was she cured? And one lady who came to our retreat was when I was home in January. She said at 26 I had breast cancer. She said I had chemotherapy and radiotherapy and mastectomy. She said 5 years after that I had a party because, they said she'd been cancer-free for 5 years. She said 2 weeks later she had pain in her hips. She's got cancer in her hips now. Was she cured? And I have heard that so many times. It appears like it has done it, but comes back. Because if you don't turn the tap off, if you don't find the cause, you will never have a cure. A lady said to me, Barbara, have you heard the latest research in America? These doctors are discovering that cancer thrives with high sugar and no oxygen. I said, well, I'm so glad that they're studying that, but did you know that in 1946, Professor Otto Warburg got a Nobel Prize for that discovery? 1946. We're 2025. See, what happened? Well, the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds came in. And they funded the research to go to chemoradiotherapy. Cancer hates an alkaline environment. You see, cancer thrives in an acid environment. So let me go back to Elizabeth Cott. She didn't like the sound of chemo. She didn't like the sound of the side effects. And a friend gave her a DVD of mine, because this was probably 10 years ago now, on cancer. So she booked into Misty Mountain Health Retreat. And she went through the treatments that I'm going to show you that we did there. She went home and she was feeling great. And after 3 months, she went back to the doctor. And he said, keep doing what you're doing and I'll see you in 6 months. Now, what did he say 3 months before? You're going to have chemo immediately. This is fast growing. You see, all her cancer markers had gone down. Her inflammatory markers had gone down. And so he did not pressure her to do anything at all, but to keep doing what she's doing. She ended up going back after 1 year after her initial diagnosis, and the doctor said, I'm a bit puzzled, but one of your tumours has disappeared. I think it was something like 8 months later, another tumour had disappeared. When she goes to see the doctor now, the specialist, the oncologist are there, they just look at her. They can't understand what is happening. She said, I'm in my late 70s now, and she said, I have never felt better. And when I was being attacked in Australia, they said, Elizabeth Cott is a fictitious woman. She said, give them my phone number. I said to her a few weeks later, have they rung you? She said, no. No, they haven't. Maybe they don't want the truth. I don't know. See, my husband has a political party in Australia. It's called HEART, Health, Environment, Accountability, Rights and Transparency, campaigning for free choice for Australians. And we actually think that's why they attacked me, to get at him. He said he wasn't, that came in from sideways there. But when you understand the inside workings of the cell and where the cancer runs, then what we aim to do is create an environment in the body where cancer cannot survive. So no matter what type of cancer it is, this is where we work at. So I think I'm learning fast. And so what we aim to do is to turn off the tap and if you don't turn off the tap, you're still going to be mopping up in the other corner. What I always do, and I think this is a very simple formula, is you always look at the person's history, because the history does give you some indications of why this might be happening. And if someone has say breast cancer, I always ask, were you ever on the pill? Now, not every woman that's been on the pill has breast cancer, but it's surprising the amount of women that are on the pill and their daughters in their late 20s are getting breast cancer. But also I was reading the report of a breast surgeon, and he said it's alarming the amount of young women who are getting breast cancer in the breast where they put their mobile phone in the bra. It's called the silent killer, is that exposure to electromagnetic field. So that is another aspect, and sometimes it can be a few threads. Sometimes her mother was on the pill. So if a woman's on the pill for 5, 6, 7 years before she gives birth to her children, then her children can be born with a hormonal imbalance. But that woman can give birth to 5 children, and some will have a major imbalance, some don't even appear to have an imbalance. It's just, in fact, I think we all know the genetics that comes through. But you know what they're saying today about genetics? You can only apply 5% to genetics. Well, if genetics were the cause, that would take away our free choice. Only 5% to genetics. The fact is, genetics may load the gun, but it is lifestyle that pulls the trigger. And that is an area of interesting study. It's called epigenetics, the effect of lifestyle on our genes, showing that we can switch the genes on or off by our lifestyle, even actually by our thoughts. That, it's like one lady, she said, when her doctor said to her, you've got 6 months to live, she said, you're not God. She said, only God knows how long I've got to live. And if anyone here has been told that, please reject it immediately. Because the fact is, the body is very obedient to the mind. And how many people are told that, and to the very day they do. So that is another aspect, is what's happening in the mind. So the first thing to do is to starve the cancer. And when you realise what the cancer loves, high sugar. So what we suggest when someone is coming to us wanting to conquer cancer, no sweet at all for 6 weeks. It's not as actually severe, it is more severe and strict than the cancer-conquering diet. And there is a reason for that. And there are several authors today, and Professor Constantini, he's head of the World Health Organization Department of Mycology. And the Department of Mycology is the study of fungus. And he found a strong link between fungus and cancer. And I find in some cases there's a strong link, and in some cases there's not a strong link. And in some cases I can see that it's a major hormonal imbalance that's causing the breast cancer, but in other cases it's not so. That's why you're the doctor, because if there's anything I've learnt in my many years on planet Earth, it's never to be absolute. There's so many factors that come into play. It's like the lady that had inflammatory breast cancer that came to us, and her breast was very large and inflamed. It was like a boulder on her chest. And she came at a very advanced stage, and it had developed after she found out that her 17-year-old daughter had been pack raped. So there was a very strong emotional aspect there. So, and yet another woman can go through that but not quite react in that way. That's why we are all so very different. Another reason why we should be our own doctor. We had another lady that came with her breast like a rock. She was only 35. And it really surprised me because she'd written a book on the acid-alkaline balance in the body, so she knew health. She was a doctor of chiropractic from Canada. And when she walked out of the room, I was left with her husband, and I said, how did it get to that? He said, I don't know. She'd sort of, a little lump arise, and she just thought it wouldn't go anywhere, and she didn't do anything, and it just got... In fact, it was to the point now that no one could, not even medicine can do anything. They could not even do a mastectomy because it had grown into the bones of her chest. And she was just living on heavy painkillers. There was not much we could do at all because she couldn't lie. It was very, very sad. And it was the next program, a friend of hers came and did the program, and she said, let me tell you a little bit of background. She used to do body sculpting, which is like bodybuilding, but women. And she showed me photos on the internet of her, in a G-string, standing like this, and the muscles and the... She said they don't drink for 3 days before they show. And when they don't drink for 3 days, it makes all the muscles and the arteries stand out or something. And also when a woman is heavily training like that, she stops menstruating. It's not uncommon with women athletes. And what happens then is progesterone levels drop and the estrogen levels rise. So I started to link the things coming together. Her mother had been on the pill before she gave birth to her. She'd been training intensely and she hadn't had a period for a year, so that caused estrogen levels to rise. And then the total dehydrated, you see that again, factors coming in. It's quite possible if she'd immediately started to work with castor oil on that, if she'd balanced the hormones with the yam cream, it's quite possible that she could have prevented it going there. But I tell you those stories because every person's story is a little bit different and there are different factors coming together. So when I say starve, definitely in endocrine it means balance the hormones. That's a very important part whenever there's endocrine cancer. But what also starving is checking the house for any mould, because mould is definitely a factor, sometimes a large factor, sometimes a minor factor. I have another book in my library at home, and by the way, Professor Constantini, who was former head of the World Health Organization Department of Mycology, the study of fungus, in his books he quotes 30,000 research papers showing the link between cancer and fungus. And I have another book in my library by an Italian oncologist named Dr. Tullio Simoncini. Now, he was an Italian oncologist that was getting 90% success rate with cancer. He was injecting sodium bicarbonate straight into the cancer. So this is the other factor, is alkalis. And when we go on our journey through the gut tomorrow night, you will see that the lining of the stomach has sodium bicarbonate to neutralise stomach acid if it tries to get through the stomach lining. And when you get down to the pancreas, it releases sodium bicarbonate to neutralise the acid coming out of the stomach. It's a naturally occurring substance, is sodium bicarbonate. And our grandmothers and great-grandmothers used sodium bicarbonate to clean the bathroom, to kill mould in the bathroom, because fungus and mould cannot survive in an alkaline environment. So what Dr. Tullio Simoncini was doing, he was injecting via a portacath sodium bicarbonate straight into the cancer, and he said the cancer would just shrink because it gives a wave of alkalinity to the cancer. And he was probably 12 years ago, he had a little clip on YouTube where he'd put a camera down into a lung and showed the cancer. It was like a white growth. And then via a portacath, he injected sodium bicarbonate and you could see the cancer shrinking up. So what's happened to him? Well, Unfortunately, he injected sodium bicarbonate into someone and apparently they died. I don't know whether they died then or they died the next day. There's no documentation of it, and we don't know whether the person was about to die anyway. My husband said if only he'd injected him with chemotherapy. Because you know what they did? They put him in jail and put him on a charge of manslaughter and took all his qualifications away. That wouldn't have happened if he'd injected with chemotherapy. So unfortunately, that often happens to people who are onto something good. The pharmaceutical company can't make money out of sodium bicarbonate. But he was getting incredible results, and he said that in every case of cancer that came to him, because he's an oncologist, he found Candida albicans. So the title of his book is Cancer is a Fungus. Now, one of the accusations against me in Australia is that I quote a disgraced oncologist, Tullio Sammartini. He is not disgraced in my eyes. He was getting those results. But unfortunately, someone died. But we've seen it at our place. We've had people come and you sort of think, oh dear, it looks like they're going to die tomorrow. You know, it's the very last stage when they come to us. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't look to natural ways until they've just about been through the mill, unfortunately. So mould is definitely a factor in the majority of cases. May not be in every case. With Elizabeth Cott, she's a Polish lady, the lady that had the 3 tumours. Her house was as clean as a pin. There was definitely mould there, but she used to use a lot of chemicals. She said, I was guilty of keeping my house so spotlessly clean. It was dangerous in my house. There were so many chemicals. And she said, and I also discovered another factor. She said, I go to a Polish church and I'm the dessert maker. And she said, we Polish love our desserts. And she said, I used to make a meringue cake. We call it a pavlova. They beat egg whites and sugar and bake it. She said, I used to make one this big and I would put 16 cups of white sugar in that. Think of that next time someone offers you a slice. Whew. She said, and you see, this lady she's a vegetarian. She never drank, never smoked. And people say, why would she get these tumours? But can you see her exposure to the chemicals and also the high sugar diet that she said, I believe I was just feeding those cancers. And that's why, number one, you stop. You stop what? Anything that could be contributing to it, and the sugars. And this also includes even the refined carbohydrates. And tomorrow we're going to be looking at diabetes, I think is our second lecture, and I'll be going through the carbohydrates and showing you how the refined carbohydrates, they can be creating just as much sugar as even refined sugar. And she said that, she used to make a lot of desserts and they only ever ate the whites, the white breads, the white pastas. Number 2, and that is the kill. And in our last class, we looked at fungus. We looked at how it has a similar way that you can kill it. And when you realise that cancer and fungus are closely related, and in some cases it plays a large part, in some cases, like Elizabeth Cott, not a large part. So there are herbs that will kill, but they won't kill you. But the way to do this is to alternate. Now, as I showed you in our last lecture, our microorganisms have the ability to adapt and adjust. And that is why just coming in and blasting bacteria with antibiotics really isn't the answer. You have to find out why they're there in the first place and create an environment in the body where it can't survive, and at the same time taking the herbs to knock it back. But you'll notice how I showed you that our microorganisms have the ability to adapt and adjust. So if you keep throwing garlic at it, it'll eventually adapt and adjust to it. So what you do is you do a different one every week or every 2 weeks. So it might be garlic 3 times a day for a week or 2 weeks. And then just as the microorganisms are starting to get used to that, you do something else. You might do olive leaf extract 3 times a day for 2 weeks. And then grapefruit seed extract. Grapefruit seed extract's very strong. It's about 5 drops in a little bit of water 3 times a day. And then another one is portiaco. And portiaco is a South American herb that has strong antifungal properties. And another one is oregano oil. You call it oregano. Is that right? Now, I had a sore throat about 3 weeks ago, so I took oregano oil. Oh, I tell you, it's bad. Real bad. And I was just taking 1 drop. So if you take it as part of your program, you start with 1 drop in just a little bit of water. And then you might have a nice carrot, celery and apple juice to follow that. And that is a juice that is highly alkalizing too, is the carrot, celery and apple juice. But back with the oregano oil, some people have found they can build up to even 3 drops 3 times a day. You just do what you can handle.
What was in between the carrot and the apple juice?
So I'll go back to that now. I'll go back to the juice and show you the juice. So we're going to look at a whole lot of ways you can alkalize, and juices have been used very successfully in the treatment of cancer because the juices are nutrient-packed and the body needs nutrients to heal. And the one that we use is 80% carrot. This is called the vegetarian's milk because you could just about subsist on this juice. In fact, I've met 2 women who gave it to their babies instead of milk. Their babies had major allergies. 10% apple and 10% celery. Now, some people have commented to me that isn't that a lot of sugar when you realise that you're trying to get the sugars down? Because they're so high in minerals that it doesn't get the sugar levels up. I don't suggest that you have 10 of those a day, but 3 a day. What we usually do at our retreat, when people come to Misty Mountain, they usually come in on Sunday, and Monday and Tuesday are juicing days. And we serve a juice every 2 hours, and it's mostly carrot, celery and apple. Sometimes we'll variate a bit and put some cucumber in. Sometimes we'll put a bit of beet in. Sometimes we'll put some greens in. But that's the main one. But that is a very alkalizing juice. And on Friday we're going to be looking at inflammation, and that certainly is a great additive to conquer inflammation. Green drinks is another big alkalizer. So with green drinks, what we do at Misty Mountain, because we've got a big garden and we've got a lot of land, is we'll gather wild greens, say 4 cups of wild greens, 4 cups of water, blend them together. We always make 1 of the cups of greens mint, so it tastes a bit better. And we blend it and strain it and pour it into bottles. So it's like drinking grass. It's just liquid green. So here is the molecular structure of plant blood, which basically is chlorophyll. And here is the molecular structure of human blood. Looks almost identical. I don't know why the pen decided to do that, but it did. So there's plant and there's human. There is one difference, and the difference with the human blood is the middle molecule is iron, and with the plant blood, the middle molecule is magnesium. And so these green drinks have a cleansing effect in the tissues and also in the blood, and are blood boosters. And they're highly alkalizing because the green vegetables are high in the alkaline minerals, which are magnesium, calcium, potassium, and sodium and iron. They're the alkaline minerals. Now, if you don't have greens like we have, the person can buy barley green or green barley, or you can buy chlorophyll and maybe have that 3 times a day. So what you're aiming to do is alkalize from the inside. There's more ways you can alkalize. Dr. Tullio Simoncini was injecting sodium bicarbonate into the cancer of his patients. I'm not a doctor. I don't put portacaths in, but we discovered a treatment that was very effective. And this is not a cancer cure, because the body only is the one that can cure cancer. But what it is, it's part of a regime of giving the body so it's impossible for cancer to survive, and they're sodium bicarbonate wraps. Can you drink sodium bicarbonate? The only time that I would advise that would be to gargle it if you had cancer in the throat, because sodium bicarbonate only alkalizes what it touches. And if someone had stomach cancer, they could drink it first thing in the morning and maybe last thing at night, because the only part of the stomach that is acid, the only part of the body that's acid is the stomach. And the stomach should be acid because it's acid that breaks the food down. But the acid's only released when you see, smell, think, look food. So when you wake up in the morning, it's not acid. The acid's just released when the food comes. And so if there is stomach cancer, then the sodium bicarbonate can be drunk first thing in the morning or maybe last thing at night. Remember, sodium bicarbonate only alkalizes what it touches. How would you make it up? Usually a teaspoon to a cup of water. But also, if someone has colon cancer, they could put the sodium bicarbonate mix into an enema, and they could have an enema with it. But what we were doing, and a Canadian doctor gave me this recipe, was sodium bicarbonate wraps, where we get 2 kilos of sodium bicarbonate, 5 litres of hot water and lemon juice of a lemon, and we dip towels in, rinse it out, and one part of the body, then cover it with wool, and then another towel on the leg, and then another one on the arm. It's quite an involved treatment, and then wrap the whole body in a blanket. So all surface areas from the neck down are covered with the very hot sodium bicarbonate infused towels, which of course opens the pores of the skin, and it comes into the tissues. Green drinks and this carrot, celery and apple juice, they alkalize the tissues internally. Sodium bicarbonate only alkalizes what it touches, but the beauty of the wraps is that it's been taken in through the pores. Also, another treatment that alkalizes is hyperbaric chambers. Now, the hyperbaric chambers were developed for divers with bends. You see, the air we're breathing in is 79% nitrogen and 21% oxygen. So the divers come up so quick from the depths that they can't breathe out all the nitrogen, so it comes into bubbles in their tissues, or muscles, joints. And what they found was when they put them in the hyperbaric chamber, the hyperbaric chamber works on Henry's law, and Henry's law states that more gas goes into a liquid under pressure. And the gas, of course, is oxygen, pure oxygen being pumped in, and the liquid is the blood, because the blood is the carrier of oxygen. And so the hyperbaric chamber just ups the oxygen content in the body and so in the cell. And cancer cannot live in the presence of oxygen. There is a retreat in Eden, it's called Eden Valley in Colorado, and they have several hyperbaric chambers. And another treatment they do is the fever baths, which has been used for many years. That's another one of upping the temperature of the body to literally burn out harmful pathogens in the body. So when someone comes to our retreat in Australia, this basically is what we do. We give them a diet that's no fruit for 6 weeks, lots of vegetables, legumes, because legumes are medium to low in carbohydrates, a little grain, not a lot, nuts and seeds, and there are so many different legumes and so many different vegetables, you can have quite a nice variety. And the herbs, alternating them every couple of weeks, and the juices and the green drinks, and when they're at Misty, the hyperbaric and the sodium bicarb wraps. And this basically is what Elizabeth Cott did. And she found that little by little her cancers went. And we had another man attend our program with prostate cancer. And he didn't really want to be at our retreat, but his wife and his daughter were really keen, but he did not like what medicine was offering to him. So he went along with it. And when he came, it was very interesting because he was mid-50s, his wife was early 50s, his daughter was 30. And everything I was talking about, this is about 5 years ago, his daughter and his wife were, yes, yes, he'll do it, yes. And he was, suppose, but he was sort of there a bit reluctantly, but he knew he had to do something and he didn't want to do what medicine offered. And it was funny, we'd offer him the green drinks and he'd look at it, and his daughter and his wife are just about pouring it down his throat, but he just did whatever they told him. And they went home, and before he went home, we laid out the program. It was in my book, Self-Heal by Design. It's called the Cancer Conquering Diet. So I give illustrations of what to eat. And then after 6 weeks on that, there's the antifungal diet, stage 1. So that's usually 2 months on that. And that person can start having some grapefruit, Granny Smith apples, and maybe a little bit more carbohydrates. And then after 2 months of that, they go to the antifungal stage 2 diet. And that's the maintenance diet. That's the diet the person stays on until they get the all clear. And that's a little bit more fruit, maybe some berries now, which aren't really high sweet. And you have a wonderful bread in America. It's called Simple Needs. And that Simple Needs is a gluten-free, and it has low carbohydrate, great protein bread. They'll even ship to your house, the Simple Needs breads. It's all organic. It's great. And so so this guy with prostate cancer, what we also did was put him on the wild yam cream to balance the hormones. He also took some herbs for the prostate, saw palmetto. In my book, Sustain Me, I have a chapter called Male Matters. So it's about male matters, where I talk about the prostate and list the herbs in there. So we heard from him 3 months later. He said, I've just had a test and I have no cancer. Now he's interested. And one of the big contributing factors with his cancer was he was a strawberry farmer. So a lot of chemicals were being used there. And I tell you all these stories to show you that almost no two are exactly the same. But what is the same is that we all live in a body that's got an inbuilt ability to heal itself, and it will when we give it the right condition. We had one man come and he just had 16 fine needle biopsies on the prostate. I said, "Is there anything left?" The prostate's only about as big as a walnut. 16 fine needle. Can you imagine how damaging that is to the prostate? Personally, I would never have a biopsy because a biopsy is damaging the tissues. And when those tissues are damaged, that's when cancer can increase. I don't tell anyone what to do. I just tell people what I would do. Because it's our God-given right to choose what we do to our bodies. And my aim is to give you information so you are better prepared to make decisions on what actually you want to do to your body. Because the fact is, if you've just been diagnosed with cancer and you're being pushed in a certain way, you have got time to think. And when God said in 2 Timothy 1 verse 7, "I have not given you the spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and a sound mind." You know what a sound mind does? They say to the doctor, "Thank you so much for your advice. Right? I'm going to seriously consider this." And as you go out, you might say, "Don't call me, I'll call you." Because it's your right. It's your right to do what you do to your body. And I also know that it can be difficult when loved ones, family and friends pressure because they love you. They don't want to lose you. And that's why I really believe that their eyes could be opened if they would hear these basic principles. But the good news is we've seen many people conquer cancer. And people say to me, "Well, how do you know?" I say, "Well, you don't know. God only knows." Much depends on how advanced it is, depends on how damaged already the body is, depends on how diligent the person is to do what you've got to do to get the results. And you might have heard the poem, "Choose Your Hard." Marriage is hard, divorce is hard, choose your hard. Keeping fit is hard, being obese is hard, choose your hard. Saving your every cent is hard, being in debt is hard, choose your hard. And that is our God-given right to choose what we do to our body. Some might say, "Wow, that's a lot of work." Do you know, the people that have done this and the people who have experienced the results, they say, "No, it wasn't hard at all because of the results that I got." So it's important to listen to your body. It's important to follow it. It's important to do what you feel it's your God-given right to do. As we close, I'd like to say a word of prayer and bid you good night. Father, thank you so much for your goodness and your mercy, this incredible body you've given us, and the simple, natural treatments that we can apply to get the most out of our body. Thank you for bringing us, and I pray your heavenly hand will be on our travel, and I look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow night. Amen.